of the finest places in the world to go and do some cold water surfing. Now let's get the stream linked in a few places and then we can really get started. Shouldn't take me too long. What's this mod? I don't know, man. There's a logo in the background, but I don't think it's related. It looks like we're going to be doing another free-for-all, which are 2v2, which is fun. Let's see, they're both going to be the Elves of the Falas, and Melkon is going to be... he is going to be Angband, and we will be facing off against Angband, so let us build an army worthy of Finarfin. Pretty standard stuff that'll go into it, honestly. The Arqueni, I think, are a good pick in this, in the event that we run afoul of the Uruloki. I'm going to try and limit... we do want like good shielded units, so we're going to have them. Marksmen are important. Let's do that. Some upgraded swordsmen will be useful for dealing with all of the chaff that'll be coming our way. And that will probably do. Definitely upgrade both of them with their attack, which will be important. One of our limited units with armor piercing is going to be the Wardens of Nargothrond. Might almost be worth it to invest in some Swordsmen of Taldirnan. Why don't we do that? We can't really without sacrificing too many of the Spearmen. Hum hum hum. I think that'll have to do. Go ahead and we'll get this out. Uruk is going to be on our team, which means I get to show off some of the cool new Sons of Feanor editions. They've got some new mounts, they've got new textures. I got a bunch of new textures, actually. And there's some other cool additions that have been added to our test build. They're going to really shake up the way that not just the Sons of Feanor, but also some other units tend to play. Hello, Jazz Deep. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to be playing, to answer your question there, Lurk, I will be playing as the House of Finarfin. Let's see how many people we can pull in the meanwhile. And then I can talk to you about some really cool stuff. Some pretty big announcements that have been made already on our Discord and sort of in a not very official capacity on our ModDB. But that will be a new faction that we'll be adding to Silmarillion Total War. And it's not one of the factions that we've talked about earlier. This is a brand new faction that will bring its own playstyle, its own roster, and things like that. And it's not going to be an elf faction, so that's surprising. Yeah, I pretty well knew exactly what I wanted to play. To answer your question there, Safi, we are playing on the test build. That's why it's got the closed alpha stream in there. Which factions will be getting legendary units? I don't know, a bunch of them. I'm kind of taking that as I go along. Largely, I use legendary units to fill a need or a niche, or to spice up a roster so that it doesn't always play the same way, just to add a little bit of options. So there are some factions out there like Doriath currently who are really complete and really versatile, and so they don't really need a legendary company for multiplayer, but other factions like the Sons of Feanor, however, did. And so they got things that were a little bit off specialization for them, but it also allowed them to, you know, play with their compositions and make things that are interesting. Because while it is important for me to kind of stay true to the original design philosophy of Silmarillion Total War, sometimes practical concerns like that has to yield in the face of practical concerns, and I don't want everyone to play the same way because that's just not fun. And that cuts both ways too. Like, everyone could play the same way because everyone has the same roster, or because there's really only one way to play the faction, which obviously is not a good thing. We don't like that. I don't like it. What are we going to do next here? I'll check chat in just a moment. Nice big ol' wide phalanx. Don't want to blob up too much in the face of the inevitable Uru Loki. Let's see what my ally Uruke does here. Over here. Got our marksman, and a little tip. I see a lot of people do this. They'll put their archer units right next to each other because, you know, it's convenient and it's easier to keep them together in that way. I don't recommend doing it because they can very easily be shut down by just one or two units, and even if it happens for just a few minutes, it can swing the balance of power in a game. So I'm gonna pop back here, like so. There's a decent little, like, raised area here. That'll give our archers an opportunity to fire into blobs as they present themselves. I'll take these guys off of auto fire. You guys, though. That. Allies right next to us. Take a brief look at chat here. What are you guys going to release in the next episode of the Historic Battles? I've submitted basically everything that needs to be done to my editor, and then when he is done, I'll be able to post the next one. Do I know what a killer team? You know what a killer team would be? Feanor, Doriath, and Finarfin. Yes, very much so. I think I've played games against that, and it's an absolute powerhouse combination. It's a tough one. We need another human clan and dwarves, which are already promised. Yes, we do need another human clan, and that brings me to my announcement, is that we will be adding a new human faction. That being the House of Haleth. They are going to be pretty... I don't want to make direct comparisons because they're not the same, but they are analogous in some ways to Assyrian, except that they are more melee-focused ambush factions. So they do have a little bit of range capability, but like they've got a lot of light and medium infantry, mostly light infantry, and their weapon types have some unique traits attached to them. One of the big ones is that their sword units all have relentless, so they can't be stunned. The axe units all have armor piercing. They've only got the one-handed axe units, though. And the spearmen tend to be really, really, really good in the woods. They've actually got cavalry that has bonuses in the woods, which is unique among every faction in the game, because every other faction's cavalry either takes penalties or just doesn't get bonuses. So yeah, there's a lot there. But it's not Durin's clan. No. There's no Longbeards that are actually in Beleriand. Khazad-dûm exists, but it's a far-off, distant rumor. It's like a world away, essentially. But there are the dwarves of Belegod and Nogros, which we will be adding. But let's go ahead and get this started. But yes, so we will be adding a new human faction. A lot of light infantry, a lot of kind of interesting stuff to them. Like, some of their units will have a primary... So in Medieval 2, units can have primary and secondary weapons. So bowmen, for example, have a bow primary. That's their first weapon. That's the one they're always going to use when they're not in melee. Secondary weapon is what they use when they are attacked in close quarters. This same applies to lancers, who will drop their lances when they get into melee after the initial charge. Now, we have a number of units that will be like that. The Philothrim Forester units will also be following this philosophy, but there are a lot of units in the Haladin roster that have a primary spear attachment. So what this means for the unit is that when charging or when braced, they are going to be using a spear template. So if they're getting charged down by cavalry, for example, they will have some defenses. The cavalry won't just like have it all their own way. They'll have the extra melee defense, so they can blunt charges pretty well. Or they can countercharge, and some of those spears are actually going to be armor-piercing. So they get an armor-piercing charge, but that is somewhat mitigated by the fact that they are spearmen. So they're in certain ways, they're kind of like foot lancers for certain units, which I think is a fairly unique combination. And currently nobody else in the mod really uses that. Let's see here. I'm facing off... Oh, it's double Falas. What do you know? I was expecting Angband. That's okay, because our army is also not terrible at fighting the Falas. So we're going to have to, like, basically take the center. Let me just talk to my ally here. Wow, my spelling is amazing. Amazing. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to matter too much. So what we need to quickly do is shift. Get some fire to those Philothrim as they begin to move forward. It looks like they're amalgamating everything, and they're going to go right up the center. Luckily, our ally is at least experienced with House of Feanor, and he's got a decent amount of cavalry. Lots more infantry, though. Seeing any other cavalry around. I think this is just what he's got. He's got a core here of lancers, melee cav, and knights, which, you know, isn't terrible. It's certainly more than what these guys have. Okay, we're gonna draw first with our archers. These other guys are more quickly moving as well. Put some fire into the foresters because that's fairly easy. They're going to disappear eventually, so. And we'll switch on to the Rangers once I've dealt a decent amount of damage to the Foresters. We have some time here. In total, 4 more factions will be added. Well, to be perfectly honest, Jazzdeep, I am considering another faction in addition to the Haladin to bring us up to a total of 13. I've drawn up a roster for it. But I'm not 100% sure on its implementation, so I'm not going to talk about it today. But in addition to the Haladin, I am kind of planning to potentially add another unit. Dale's going to have to run away with those Foresters. Took a decent little bite out of them, so we can focus now on those Rangers. So they're just going to like smash through the center, so he's going to amalgamate himself on my line, and I guess we're just going to have a big old blob fight. I can't wait, honestly. The marksman coming forward. Decent amount of damage to these units here. So those guys... I think Feanor has some archers. He's going to want to be careful, though, because, yeah, they're going to double up on the Foresters. Oh, my ally has a few archers, so it would certainly be a nice thing to have here, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like he's mostly infantry and bit of cavalry, not too much support, which is fine. It's a good army to use. And we've done a decent amount of damage to them. Lima begin to move forward. We can take some pot shots at them. They're shielded units from the front. It's probably not going to do too much. You know what? I changed my mind. That's a waste of our ammunition. gonna want these guys to be their own independent group, for sure. Should be able to hit them from here too, which is kind of impressive. We'll try that. Yeah, he's gonna want to be careful. He's just gonna get bullied. He needs to bring him back. Yeah, see, this is bad. He's been separated here. Like, this is a very poor use of his cavalry, unfortunately. These guys are a bit faster, so they're gonna catch up. See, if he'd have listened and moved back here when he had the time, that wouldn't be happening right now. Oh, he's got more, though. It's not the end of the world. He's got Marines out here, and the Marines can be very deadly to our phalanx. So I don't want him to get too much of a piece there. So I'm going to present some targets that he can't really ignore. So I'm going to go after the Marines here with my swordsman. Another unit of swordsmen can move forward. Do this as well. This is where we bring our front line forward, and that's why we had them in a control group kind of preemptively. Oh no, we need to attack them. Yes, please, thank you. Let these guys blunt the first charge, and then we'll throw in our good units. Get like a point-blank volley here from our dudes. That's gonna hurt. Or turn around at the same time too. We're gonna keep that pressure on. Actually push through that. This is where it's going to get ugly, though. This is where I should have been microing my marksman a bit better. So these guys are in this direction. This way too. This isn't totally out of control, but it's looking interesting for sure. Crap, can't continue to do that. least push these guys through so these Marines can't continue to fire at us. That would be a disaster. I see the Sons of Silmarillion coming in. Let's do that. I'm gonna have to pull these guys back. Just a little. They're at least going decently here, and I wonder how the cav fight is going elsewhere. Poorly. Yeah, see, if my ally had brought these guys back, at least he's managed to deal with their cav. He's managed to save his knights from this disaster, but he needs to bring them back here real fast.
The enemy are
Smash them up
badly
here,
bloodied.
so it's going pretty
They have
well.
lost half their men.
Could be going a bit better, but they will get some minor reinforcements. But at the very least, hand it to him. At the very least, they did keep these units out of the fray, and he did manage to annihilate a lot of their cavalry. So hats off to my ally for that. That was an important thing here, because I at least don't have to worry about that. We can continue shooting. We can shoot these guys in the back. Help the Rangers out there. We can maybe kill off a good portion of these herdsmen. We need to shoot them for sure. The split shots are nasty. Attack them. I'm trying to run low on ammo though. This is for sure a juicy target, however. Pincushions out of them. Yeah, look at that. It's beautiful. Enfilade right there. You really can't do better than that. Nice little rear charge here on the Sons of Silmarillion. And shave off some of their Germans. That's okay. But our ally is picking them apart. Like I said, Uruke is not new when it comes to playing with this faction. So now we're gonna need some help over here for sure. He's definitely showing that off here today. So I was lucky I had him because we'd be in a lot of trouble otherwise. Sons of Silmarillion, cut them up real good. Swordsman here, try to find these guys. So our allies could, or our enemies rather, could potentially just pull on through. Hard defeat. I don't know, where did these guys come from? This is just wonderful news. So these guys are on back. I think this is gonna go our way pretty convincingly. Let's do a percentage, so that's we're about 10% ahead right now. Get that charge in. good players will basically always do to you is they're going to try and turn around and get their melee defense bonus. In the case of spears and warriors like this, they also it's very much the mark of like someone who's, it's not their first rodeo if they're turning around to try and block your charges like that. There's a lot of them that hit them. You may have to do something a little bit about the golfing faction and some of their anti-units, as I do feel that they can flee a little bit too easily at times. But in this case, it is perfect.
Only half the enemy
look at some of
force
the cool new
remains.
stuff for the Sons of Feanor. So these mounts are unique to the faction. I've also gotten rid of that pink armor. So now it's the purple red. I wonder if we could find his knights in Quenny Magloral. They also have their own unit-specific mount, and nobody else in the game will use these mounts other than the Sons of Feanor. These are actually taken from the Warhammer Beginning of the End Times.
We've lost
mod.
half of our men.
So they are really, really cool and high fantasy looking. So I was really happy to be able to add those to them. I think it adds a lot. Just the Sons of Feanor, like, properly different. They're actually still beating us over here. Fingolfin is like a good faction, for sure.
Press onward.
And the pikes are amazing. But I think the herdsmen, because they take damage, something.
We've captured the enemy's general.
They rout off like,
That'll
in large
teach their
numbers.
cowardly dog
But
to
like I said,
turn
that is
tail
kind
and
of to be
run.
expected when they're being like hammered, outnumbered, and like getting charged down by cavalry. Like that kind of thing's gonna happen. Oh no! Oh, I don't think he saw it. Catch they started out. Yeah, that was a big punishing mistake there. Like the Sons of Urim and the men of the Herdsmen really mostly dead. There's just two of them left there. They'll basically never go to very exposed once they're killed. They do look really cool. And I'm thinking about doing a similar thing for Gondolin as well. Like, it's okay if some of the factions use generic mounts, like, I'm okay with that, but for the high fantasy, like, very visually striking faction like Gondolin, I think they should probably end up getting their own mounts as well. So I will look for some ways of doing that. To their credit, the men of Hithlum have come back.
The enemy army flees the field. Pursue and run them down.
Try to pull out there, fighting against some Armitar. Let's get in there. The Armitar are really cool. I was just slaughtering one of my little marksmen. That's the good thing, is that these guys, they're a very, I want to say, like, quintessential axe unit. Their melee defense is honestly not great. But their charge damage is 100%. Compensate for that in some significant ways. And as a support unit, they're basically top tier.
Our men have slain the enemy general.
Be a master
Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
Here. My mark's going to get butchered. Still my route, though. Oh, my Arqueni managed to survive all the way at the end, and I didn't lose my general. Let's see if we can find Turin. Turin in his black armor, wearing the wolf mask that he found in Nargothrond. Let's see what the percentages are. 63 to 94. That's a pretty convincing victory, but like, holy shit. We got just... If we didn't have our ally doing what he did best, and he was actually, you know, I gave him some grief early on.
This is a clear victory.
But honestly, it ended up working out perfectly because their cavalry was off in who knows where and weren't able to assist the main kind of block here, and he was just able to kind of go to town on the back, and that's why he has like a far smaller army than I do, but he's got nearly as many kills, and that's really down to my ally just kicking a lot of ass. So really good on him. Steward of Dale in them. It's a tough thing to go toe to toe with Finarfin, and I think the Philothrim will probably. I know for a fact actually that they're going to be getting a new unit. They'll be getting some Macemen, so fights against Finarfin and some of the heavily armored units will be a little bit more reasonable, and especially against Angband as well. Macemen in particular are really good against low melee defense units. So against House Finarfin, or not House Finarfin, against Angband rather. They can be that kind of unit can be a really potent force. Let's see if we can get another one out. And I'll take a look at chat now. About time you guys got rid of that pink from the Mounted Company. Yeah. Now they're nice and red. All of the units that were previously pink are very, very red now. My mic's a bit soft. Oh yeah, my mic has a tendency to like turn itself down. It's like an expensive mic, and it will like kind of adjust itself, but you should be able to hear me now. But yeah, we will definitely be adding a new human faction to the game. Will Assyrian get a new unit? Currently Assyrian is actually really, really good. There's not too much need to add new units to Assyrian specifically for multiplayer. They're a faction with a high skill cap, and I'm personally not very good with them. As we've seen in some of my streams, where like I make some not great like moves and stuff like that. It's just too many moving parts, honestly. But they are a high skill cap faction, and in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, they're probably the most powerful faction in the game, or certainly up there anyway. That being said, we are working on like builds that can reliably do well in the hands of a skilled player against a skilled Assyrian player, and we've had a little bit of success with that. But yeah, really, really good Assyrian players are hard to beat because Assyrian is just so good at what it does. So currently there's not really any need to add new units to them. As a general rule, I don't just add new things for the sake of adding new things because, well, one, that's a nightmare to balance, and two, it's kind of a waste of time, and you end up with a lot of like redundant stuff that you don't need. So I like everything to have a purpose. So like every unit, no matter what tier it's at, should have a situation that it's beneficial to you as a player to bring it. And it's not kind of like, it won't be like detrimental to you to bring any particular kind of unit in every situation. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be a place for things. So I don't just add stuff for the sake of having new things. I want it to be like very purpose driven. So let's go ahead and host another one. Let's see if we can play on some of the newer maps. So we do have a Girdle of Doriath map, so let's play with that one. Let's see if I can pull some of our testers into here as well. So you guys can hear me now? Like my mic is way better. Will we ever add the House of Bayor? Yes. In fact, they're already in the game. They won't be their own faction, and I have to change some of the decals on the shields to represent the fact that we're kind of changing what House of Edain is supporting House Feanor. But all of the Edain units in House Feanor are meant to be units from the House of Bayor. So all of the houses of the Edain are accounted for in the mod currently. I agree with that, Joseph, and I also don't want to create. Well, there's a few like hurdles to it. Is one that they're very well integrated into the House of Feanor. they're an important supporting sub-faction that the House of Feanor can't really do without in a lot of cases. Because they represent like their only foot spear unit and their only armor-piercing javelin skirmisher, and they add like spears and bows and a ton of utility. Originally, they were intended to be the House of Haleth, Joseph, which is why they have the logo on the shield for the Edine spears in Feanor. But it makes more sense for it to actually be the House of Beor. And then I was actually on vacation and I was thinking about new factions and the fact that maybe 11 factions isn't quite enough to make things interesting and to give the mod longevity. So I decided to create a House of Haleth faction on one of the drives back where I wasn't busy, driving and not, dying in a fiery car accident. So I put one together basically over a weekend, and I thought pretty hard on it, and I think what we have is really solid. It'll get changed and workshopped a bit as we move forward, as all things tend to do. But, yeah, the House of Haleth is a faction I'm really excited for. And we actually do have pictures of them up on ModDB and on our Discord. So they're... I wanted to make a Viking faction, and I swear it's not just because I started watching Vikings recently. It probably is because I started watching Vikings recently. But I think that'd be a cool aesthetic for them, and... I'm really excited to get into it. We've got 2 units done so far. One of them has a lot of like variety on it in terms of like decals on the shields, different helmets, weapons, that kind of thing. A couple of different bodies. So they'll be a pretty cool looking faction. It'll be like something like straight out of a like early Norse invasion mod, which is a more grounded kind of like take on things. But you know what? I don't think it would be totally out of place. Anyway, let's, and by grounded I mean like we have a lot of really high fantasy factions in the game, and so like adding, like early Dark Ages Vikings into the mix might seem a little bit strange, but I think it will actually be lots of fun. I don't think I want to play the House of Feanor because I suck with them. But I've played Finarfin for a few matches now, so why don't we... You know what? I'll be Feanor, whatever. Oh, we have a 5th. What do you know? See if we can pull one other guy in. 3v3 would actually be a lot of fun. And I will play as the House of Feanor. I'll show off the House of Beor. We're currently in the mod. You know what? We'll wait. We'll wait to see what our opposition's going to be like. Oh, nice. Got the Yoda guy. It's one of our newer testers. I think he's also a YouTuber. If he is, I will find out, and I will get you his information. Oh, a dew pig? Perfect. Our ally's gonna be Finarfin. Look at this. I think it was Jazz Deep who brought up, wouldn't it be a powerhouse combination if you had the House of Feanor, Finarfin, and the Realm of Doriath all together on one team? It looks like that's what we got. So I am going to go heavy on my unshielded offensive infantry, like such. And I'm going to invest a little bit into a decent bodyguard as well. But I'm going to play more of a support role, kind of like what the House of Feanor did in the last battle. And I think that can be a really valuable contribution. So we'll take some of them. I'll bump their attack up a bit so they're a bit more useful. Supporting spearmen. And now let's go hard into our calves. So some lancers are important to have. One unit. Oh, geez. We won't go knights. We'll do something more like this. Might work. How much is that? Bump these guys up a bit. Can even afford... Yeah, okay, so that's like... It's a tiny army, obviously. And we are missing a lot of like our really good stuff. But maybe we don't need the Bayor Spearman. Doot doot doot. If we did that, that wouldn't be horrible as a supporting stack. Yeah, why not? Why not? Nope, that would be just fine. Let's do that. Now we can take a quick look at chat. So will the House of Haleth be like a range-heavy faction because of their home in Breath Hill? No, because we already have a range-heavy faction, and I didn't want there to be that overlap in playstyle. It would make them a little bit redundant, because I wanted them to be light infantry, but if I made them range-heavy, then really what's the difference between them and a Assyrian aside from visuals? So I decided more of like a close quarters, kind of like Viking-esque style of like warfare. Like you get into your big infantry formations with your shield wall and you slug it out. But none of them are particularly well armored. They do have some medium armored units, and they will have an armor upgrade on them. And their intention is to be like the front line, like they're right in the middle of things. But most of their units are going to be like quite light. So there will be a little bit of like maneuvering. Obviously, you want to get off some of your mid-range and long-range skirmish ammo before you join ranks. You don't want to just necessarily rush right in, especially as the House of Haleth, because you are quite comparatively lightly armored in relation to a lot of other factions. But where's Artorias? Artorias is taking some personal time, and that's all I'm going to say on that. But yeah, so the House of Haleth will be a little bit more ranged and ambushed, or rather close quarter and ambush oriented than a ranged faction, because otherwise they just conflict too much with Assyrian. Yes, yeah, it's definitely, totally, maybe. Absolutely, because I started watching Vikings again recently, and I was like, yes, I need this in my life, and also in my mod, which consumes a lot of my life. So, yeah, we'll have some Vikings, and we'll have like some Berserkers and stuff. It's gonna be pretty cool. And some of the other like unique kind of things that they'll do is like the Berserkers will be unarmored, but I play a lot of Warhammer, and they have like specific range resistances, which I wish we had. So what I plan to do with the Berserkers is give them like a hefty shield value, probably about 5. So like from the front, they're just really badass, and I want that to be like a passive missile resistance essentially, that allows them to just not be instantly massacred by all bowmen in the game, at least not on the initial like charge in. Like if you can get around them, onto the flanks and in behind them, then the normal rules will still apply. But from the front, I would like them to have that little bit of, I guess, unique flavor to them. You can call it a ranged ward save or missile resistance or whatever you like, but it is also an important practical thing in that they won't just get shot to pieces immediately upon the battle starting, especially against certain factions like Assyrian, which the House of Haleth with their light infantry and things like that might actually be pretty decent at fighting. Tell Finarfin and Doriath to go heavy infantry. I trust that they know what to do. They're both experienced. Oh, we have another person, so we need more money. Alrighty. Guess we're doing a 4v4. Exciting! And while we're finding that 8th person, I have, it just gives me more time to talk with chat and answer any questions that you guys might have. So by all means, fire away. We get our 8th person? No, not yet. It'll take a little bit. Tommy Wiseau briefly joined. Yeah, no, he's our 7th guy. Let's see if we can pull another YouTuber in here. Maybe I can get Celtic Warband to come play a game with us. That'd be a lot of fun, I think. What house will be the bodyguard for the Gondolin? Gondolin? I'm gonna give you a guess on that one. It will perhaps unsurprisingly be the House of the King will be the bodyguard for the House of Gondolin. They will have an additional Golden Flower bodyguard composed of some of the Lords of the Golden Flower, which I've already posted the model for. Their shtick will basically be that they'll have 3 HP. They'll be very small, about 25 men in the unit. They'll be relentless, and they're going to have a big bonus against elephants, because the Balrogs will be becoming elephants. There'll be some more updates for the Balrog. They'll be coming out soon, and they're actually really exciting. But I won't say any more because I promised my teammates that I wouldn't, and I can never keep my mouth shut. So this time I aim to keep my promise and not blow the lid off the surprise with my enthusiasm. But yeah, so they'll have the two bodyguards. One of them is multiple HP. The other one, the House of the King, is a 1 HP bodyguard, much like the Aran Kirlim, for example, are for the Philothrim. Will the House of Haleth get multiple HP or single HP units only? That's a good question. I had intended for single HP units, partially because their numbers are going to be a bit smaller anyway, and so having that generic bodyguard that's like, you know, more numbers focused does actually benefit them, like benefit the entire roster and their playstyle a bit more. And the other one is because we don't have any multiple HP human units. Actually, you know what? Their bodyguard won't be multiple HP, but the berserkers that I talked about earlier will have multiple HP, and that'll actually be the very first multiple hit point human unit that we have in the game, which I think is pretty cool. Aside from the Sons of Húrin, actually, so I guess it'll be the second. But yeah, so the berserkers will have multiple HP, but it will be mitigated by the fact that their, you know, defense is not very high and their armor score is basically non-existent. I'm just waiting on that last guy. Shouldn't be too much longer. I'm leaning more towards adding another good faction because there's not really any other evil factions that we could conceivably add unless we were to make one up whole cloth. As much fun as I had, like, making a roster and a story for Tolan Gaurhoth, Angband is the big bad, and they basically are the premier evil faction. So there's some possibilities with making Angband a little bit, like, different in certain ways with some roster additions. I have been trying to think of a cool legendary company for Angband, but I haven't really come up with anything that I'm, you know, attached to just yet. But their Balrogs will be becoming elephants, which will be a big change because, you know, it allows for the area attacks that elephants get that you can't really do with just having them be generic trolls, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's not really room to add another evil faction because I just don't know who we'd add. We've got the Ulfang sub-faction, which is obviously overtly evil, and then the 2 orcs. So the Haladin will have a couple of cavalry units, actually. One of the things that they won't have is high-tier infantry, but they will have some high-tier cavalry. And they're also going to have a legendary company. They will drop with a legendary company, and it's going to be a unit of berserkers with like a different functionality, composed entirely of female warriors. And one of the other things that we might do with some of the other units is have like females be a variant. Feels weird calling them females. I feel like a fucking weirdo. We're gonna have women in the faction because the Halidin did fight with their women. It's something that happened. One of their most important, but I suppose controversial leaders was God. What's her name? I always forget. But she basically led them through what would have been a complete disaster for their house when her father and her brother died. So there'll be women in the faction, and they'll actually have a unit of women berserkers as well. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point there, Calvin. You can kind of point to the Sons of Feanor as being, I wouldn't say that they're overtly evil, but they do some very, very terrible things throughout the First Age. So they're kind of an evil faction, but that's not what you were asking, I know. But yeah, so no more evil factions for now, unfortunately. Haleth. See, I thought it might have been Haleth, but I'm like, maybe that's just the house name. But yeah, so Haleth. Because of her influence, we will have women that fight in the Halidin. Not in every unit, but some of them, and certainly there will be a full female unit of berserkers as well. Maedhros is honestly one of my favorite characters in the book. I think he's probably the most interesting. He does a lot of good things, he does a lot of bad things, and whereas a lot of the other elven lords are they're just awesome all the time, which, okay, cool, I get it. The Noldor and the elves in general, they sort of lean towards like the lawful evil side of things, but Maedhros is, or the lawful good, but Maedhros is like a lawful neutral in a lot of ways, and that like he respects like his word, and like there's that sort of respect for a hierarchy there, and that kind of thing. But yeah, he does some pretty questionable stuff. Yeah, we do actually have the Sons of Ulfang in our Easterling faction there, Greg. And whether or not they become their own faction over time, like that could be a possibility, I guess, for an evil faction, is splitting the Easterlings in two. But I don't know if I really want to do that. Yeah, they are half and half, and that's why they're split basically down the middle in our mod. So you can play as full House of Boar, and it's weird, but it can kind of work sometimes, or you can go full Ulfang, and the revert, or the same thing is also true. It's weird, but it kind of works sometimes. I'm not too sure how they'll work in campaign. I can't make any promises there since I'm not super involved in the campaign side of things. Mostly multiplayer, designing the factions and making sure that everything looks good and plays good is kind of more my responsibility, and the campaign stuff I don't do as much. So it's unclear what they'll get at this point. Maybe I can pull UMAD in here as well. Feanor is pretty cool. The House of Feanor has some really neat stuff in them. And you're going to get to see it in this game. The new mounts, the new textures, all that good stuff. We're just waiting for an 8th player. The Girdle of Doriath isn't really, like, it's a field battle. It's not a like a siege or a cityscape or anything like that. So it would be best, I think, if we have full players for this. That being said, if I don't get someone in the next like 5 or so minutes, I won't just make you watch a lobby forever. Like we'll figure out some rules to kind of make it a bit more interesting in a 3v4 setting. Maybe Windy would come join us as well. Do we have Eclipse in here? No, we already have Eclipse. I just asked him on Discord. It's a big oops. Are there any specific ones that you should read? I've read some of the letters, but you know what? I'm not real familiar with them. The person to ask would honestly be Lord of Belagost. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of all things Tolkien, so I'm not super familiar with the letters, so I can't really answer that for you. You have it, but it says you're incompatible. That's probably because you don't have... If you're in our testing community, then you probably don't have the latest patch that I uploaded, which should be version 3 of the House Fingolfin. It's actually not huge, so if you want to quickly install that, you could jump in with us. But if you're not a tester, I probably can't just make you one right now. It's something we can talk about later, but for right now, we'll just worry about that at another time. Yeah, I know. Eclipse is giving me grief. I was like, hey, Eclipse, come join me, but he's actually on my team right now. Oops. I mean, we could do that. We could give ourselves a balanced budget. That would give us a crap ton more to work with. Let's see, who are we fighting against? A lot of orcs. In this kind of situation, the Stalkers of Thargelion are actually not a terrible choice. The way that this unit has been tooled is that they are specifically very good in close quarters, or at least trade reasonably well in close quarters with orcish units, especially heavily armored ones from Angband. So they can do well for themselves. Spend a bit of cash here to beef these guys up. Pop them up there. We can definitely afford a full extra unit of mounted company as well. Yeah, that's pretty good. Give them armor. Don't worry about that too much. And let's see here. Everyone basically has all the upgrades they could possibly get, except for you guys. Well, that'll do, pig. Well, let me just take a quick look here in our chat and see if anyone's on their way. And if not, we'll get this started with a 4v3. It might not be the most balanced game, but we'll do a 4v3. We'll just get everyone to ready up. Everyone's, I think, has had time. It's also a shame that the Teleri elves got massacred. Yeah, I feel that that's a shame. Depends who you ask, I guess. If you're asking Feanor, it was acceptable losses. Just a little bit of collateral damage. But, if you're asking their descendants and, King Thingol, it's a shame. Yeah. And really, it's interesting. One of my favorite parts about the narrative is that it's nailed into you very early on that you can't overcome the Valar, but they absolutely could have overcome Morgoth as he weakened himself and poured more of his kind of power and his evil influence into the world and into his servants, and increasing his corporeal power at the cost of his spiritual essence. And it was totally conceivable that the elves could have overcome him, and how different would the story have been if they could have just put aside their pride and their petty differences. But I think that there's important, moral lessons to be learned there about keeping the big picture in mind and making an effort to cooperate in order to achieve common goals, and accepting, certain differences amongst, groups of people who, have a lot in common, but they do differ in some fundamental ways, which is something maybe that's something we need a little bit more of today. So that's one of the things that I personally take away from the Silmarillion. Okay, well, I guess we're just 3v3. Pardon me. How does the public casually play? Currently, our community isn't super huge, so it is kind of difficult to find games on public. But there isn't any reason that like our testers couldn't switch to the public build. Like, there's nothing that says that you can't play on it. And maybe my next stream I will play on the public build, and we'll get some games going that everybody can join. I've done that a few times, but I think it's about time we do that again. People just like to play with the new stuff. Like, if you can play with the House of Engulfin, a lot of people just want to, right? But yeah, it does pose certain problems for getting like public lobbies and just being able to walk into a game. But I would like to think that as our community increases, then that will be less of a problem. There's still plenty of people. Like, I link this stream in a whole bunch of different places all the time. Reddit especially, and so every time someone will be like, "Oh my god, there's a Silmarillion Total War mod? Are you kidding me? I thought that died years ago." So we're still in the process of like getting the word out, I guess, and that should over time make it easier to find public games. And I tend to wait between like when we make a public release and when we start up the test build, so that people actually have time to play on it, and that everybody can enjoy it, not just the testers. That's true. Orifer did understand that he had to fight against a common good. It's just a shame that he resented being placed under the command of an Noldo elf so much that he got himself and most of his army killed, foolishly. So, like, his heart was in the right place, but the execution left a little bit to be desired. There we go. People are finally starting to ready up now. Gilgalad is an awesome character. It's just a shame that we don't, at least I personally don't know a ton, and I've read all the books. Yeah, he's there, but he's like this mythical figure almost. Like, we know more, although it's weird that we know more about older mythical figures than we do about Gilgalad, even though he reigned in Lindon for quite a number of centuries. Like, most of the Second Age, actually, he would have been the High King of the Noldor, just being the only person left with the authority, aside from Elrond, who didn't really want it, to claim the kingship. So why don't we take a quick look here at a few things. So one thing I want to point out to you right away is that we have removed the dirt texture. A lot of people hated it. I understand why. So we removed it. It's gone. And that is going to allow you to see the Otorn Mighty Mo a little bit better in all of their glory. So they're much, much redder, a deeper, like, crimson, rather than the pink that they were before. And the same goes for these guys over here, angry little lobsters that they are. And then the pink is gone. Ooh, no, this is the Roqueni Magloro. They were never really all that pink. But they have a new mount as well that's specific to the unit and to the faction. And then, where are my Lancers at? There's my Lancers. You can see that they got the same treatment as well. So they're all red and angry and ready to separate some heads from some shoulders. Now, I don't know what. Oh, I know this one. So, okay, so this is actually a map I made for Reforged back in the day, but I added back in and then forgot that it was a thing. So, whole purpose of this army is to go over here. Now, I'll probably. No, I don't have any spearmen. I don't have any spearmen at all. Yeah, well, maybe not a good thing. So I'm gonna shift all my momentum. Do I want to be unkillable? Yeah, Sauron burned him to a crisp. That sucks. Never shake hands with Sauron. Let's see what our ally here is doing. So we're going to form up around Nargothrond, which was our strategy from the beginning. That will kind of leave the field to the Easterlings a little bit, but that's okay. Let's maybe cover the flanks. I can certainly do that. Going to build a bit back there. I don't know if this will leave us enough space, so we might want to push it back another few inches there. Probably be the best case scenario. Alright, well, let's get started. Would I choose Blackadder, Faulty Towers, or Monty Python? Choose wisely. You know, I really like Blackadder and Monty Python, and I refuse to choose between them. I like Rowan Atkinson, and I love John Cleese and crew, so it's, you know, I can't pick. I refuse to pick. You can't make me. Let's get everyone back here. I wonder what the heck he's doing. I wonder what flanks he wants me to support exactly. Okay, so he's going to draw back here. So that was probably just an oopsie on his end. That's fine. Happens to me all the time. Okay, I think we're all just going to go over here and try and form up together. You know what? That's smart. I don't see enough people do that, and they end up fighting like multiple 1v1s, and like, why would you? So, let's see who we're against. The Yoda guy, I think he's newer, so he might be a little bit slower to pursue. If it was Stewart, I think he'd be on my heels right away, but it's not. Tommy is more experienced, however, so it's not going to be quite so simple as all of that. So we're going to go over here. Yeah, our main goal here is just going to be to build around Nargothrond, because they're just such a strong anvil. And then we have the hammer of our cavalry, and that really worked out in our last 2v2, so like, why not try to replicate that? Let's go for it. Eclipse is over here, I think. Oh, this is, I see what's happening here. So Stewart's not going to like take the bait. It doesn't look like he's going to go forward too quickly. They're all going to move in tandem together, and they'll probably try to wrap around us. So we're going to have to be like cognizant of that. So in here in the trees, what texture do we have? Might be scrub, might just be normal kind of grass. So I don't think we'll get any benefit from placing our stalkers in there. But sometimes that is definitely the case. So I will put my detachments, not actual detachments though. I'll put these guys in here. I'm going to support them with some stalkers of Thargelion. These guys can all just kind of float around in here like so. And we're against Easterlings, so it might not be a terrible idea to put these guys kind of centrally. We'll keep these guys back here in reserve, defend them heavily. Yeah, and then our line should hopefully meet up just about there. Good and layered up. And the O-Torn Mighty Mo just chill in the back between these two units. Oof, what happened there? Those look like Fingolfin Lancers that all just got shredded. Interesting. these guys, I'll have them back here. My Lancers. Steward's sticking his neck out a little bit, so might be useful to have the Lancers over that way. We'll keep the Knights back. Not necessary to use them right away. You guys... What do they have here? They have marksmen. We can expend some of that ammunition. Use up some of it if we are able to. That would be important. And we'll just kind of, we'll play by ear. We'll play the field as best as we're able to. Our mobility is obviously really important, so. Warband coming in. Oh, that's bad news bears, isn't it? Got some warriors over here, though. They're going to make short work of them. For sure. And I'll bring my troops over here as well. Just don't want Stu to just kind of have it all his own way. Pushed far too far forward. It's a good thing we caught that in time. That would have been ugly. Oh, no, those Lancers are coming. Anything I want to pew-pew at? Definitely. Let's get those Sons of Wolfang. Let's see, did he bring any cav? He did. He brought a whole bunch of calves, so we're going to have to be careful about that. So his marksmen are back. We should be out of range of them, I would think. We're going to be careful, though. Looks like things have already started to go down here. Doriath might actually need some help from us. Send some troops over this way. Oh shit. Oh, the Lancers got me. That's foolish. We'll escape from them though. Mostly intact. He brought 2 Sons of Wolfang. That's real scary. I have an opportunity over here. Let's bring forward some real answers. Things are not going well for us, are they? Alright. Get those lances down, hopefully. Keep an eye on them. Right. That'll be enough to destroy them. Got these troops now running for their lives. Sons of Wolfang having a bad time. That's what we like to see, isn't it?
enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
Shoot the sentries for sure. Block with the weaker unit. Go for the rear charge here. These guys back. Leave them in there for too long.
Good tidings. The enemy general lies dead.
Oh jeez. I'm not too afraid to move these guys forward. Actually, we shouldn't do that. We should draw them back instead. Don't know where our horse archers have gone. Oh Jesus. Must have some. Oh yeah, they definitely do. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be doing that damage. Yeah, they're gonna pick me apart here. My Lancer's at. After this marksman. Should be enough here to finish these guys off. It's probably Lancers. And I'm gonna lose. Actually, we can't really commit too many of these guys to this fight just yet. No. I should have left them in there that long.
Behold how our cowardly foe runs. It's time to press the attack.
Okay, well. Those Lancers charged home. Seem to have lost track of them over here in the woods.
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
I'll let them fight the Salamandrines for a little bit. That's a fight that they can definitely win.
Only half our force remains.
Bloody light lancers are just all over my ass. I can't even see them in the woods there. The lag now. Oh, Tommy. Of course it's Tommy. The guy we're struggling to fight at the moment. Let's see if he crashed or not. Sorry, Tommy. Fix your internet, bud. Oh man, I can't even kick him. Come on, why wouldn't it even let me kick him? That makes no sense to me. Ah, he crashed. Well, we can't even kick him. That sucks. Oh well, shit happens. Apparently he crashed. It's a shame. I think we had that one. That was definitely like we were rolling up the line. That would have pretty well been it. I think we would have swarmed against Easterlings and beat them. The steward was already out. Tommy Wiseau was getting beat, so it would have just been the Yoda guy. Unfortunately. Well, that's a good 3 games. No, sorry, I already dropped out of the game there, Wendy. My disappointment was too mighty. I couldn't stay in there any longer. I remember that part in the Silmarillion where everyone had to stop fighting because Sauron had a poor internet connection. Right? It's just the worst. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, my poor cursor got smashed by something. I didn't see the Lancers because I couldn't see them. I couldn't see their banners through the tree, so I ended up losing track of them. I thought maybe they had like moved on or were hidden or something. I don't know. My poor cursor though. They would have done really well. But I think we would have been able to pull that out. Like maybe our army would have been like nice and ripped up, but we helped our allies enough with our Lancers on the other side. Yeah, we would have basically jumped him on 3 sides and beaten him up and stolen his lunch money. I think that's the way that was heading. But you know, sometimes it's like that. So I hope you guys have enjoyed Silmarillion so far. Hope you're excited about the new faction, the Haladin. If you guys have any additional questions about them, even if they've already been asked and you're just, you know, curious, go ahead, and I have no problem reiterating that. I'll give it about, you know, a couple of minutes here before I sign off. Yeah, it's a pretty tight matchup. It's a shame. We were like 5% difference, but that was going to turn around very, very rapidly because Fingolfin was melting, and our allies were just like looping around, and we would have eventually surrounded the Easterlings and beaten them. I think that's how that would have ended. But I think that's really just about this minute ago. What's planned for it? Is it going to be campaign or battle based? To answer your question there, Joseph, not in the event that you're still here. Oh, it looks like someone already did it for you. But yeah, it will be both campaign and multiplayer. Multiplayer is just easier to do in a shorter period of time than campaign. Campaign is a much larger time investment. So that'll be something that comes out much, much later. But we do have a lot of interesting plans for campaign. Like, I want to make a campaign. They will have axe throwers for sure, Jazdeep. They will definitely have an axe throwing unit. And some of their cavalry will have some jabs as well. The new faction's main playstyle, that being the House of Halath, is in some ways similar in nature to Assyrian, except that they are more about getting in your face. So Assyrian, being the Green Elf faction, they like to do some kiting. There are a lot of light infantry, not really any like high armor values and things like that. I will definitely do that in a second there, Calvin. I'm just gonna finish answering R&B's question. The Haladin faction will be more focused on getting into close quarters, so they have some interesting kind of like stat shenanigans that basically make their archers a little bit more passable as infantry, but they trade off a lot of ammunition for it. So they have some like long range skirmish, but they will be very much about kind of getting in your face and chopping you to bits with axes, swords, and spears. I've invited a few guys to watch the stream who can't comment on the mod. Brief overview is that Silmarillion is a mod for Medieval 2, obviously. We want to have a very interesting and engaging and well-balanced multiplayer experience, and we want to pair that with a solid, challenging, consistently challenging, I should say, campaign experience once that's ready for everybody. So it should be something that my personal hope for the mod is that it's something that can tide you over in terms of like Lord of the Rings first age fantasy stuff until we get a proper Total War set in Middle-earth. So until CA basically makes us obsolete, I would like this mod to be able to stand the test of time. So that's kind of the big thing, is that it's solid campaign, solid multiplayer, true to the lore, and it's something that you can play over and over again. It should have a lot of replayability to it. I was going to commit war crimes against the Easterlings. Yeah, that was going to be a massacre, I'm pretty sure. Yoda might have been able to pull it out, but I was giving him the business there on the front line. He was breaking through for sure, but I think I was coming up with my heavy swordsmen and my other things. I still had my cavalry and my allies, so we would have probably been able to sandwich him. Yeah, it will certainly be an interesting thing. And there's also some possibility that if the mod becomes successful and gains traction in Medieval 2, that we may move over to the Unreal 4 engine and just make an entire strategy game based around the first stage and just build everything up that way. We also have another possibility with the Pyrogenesis engine, which Hyrule Total War has already made the switch over to. And there's a lot of cool stuff in there that we can do both visually and mechanically to make that really interesting. So we are exploring some other possibilities for things to move forward into a more modern era and not just be solely based on Medieval 2. But that's going to be a really long time in the coming. Medieval 2 is still the focus, and it's still the testing ground for all of our big ideas. So that's going to continue to be the case for the foreseeable future, yeah. But if we do make the switch to Pyrogenesis or to Unreal 4, you might see things like multiple special abilities on a single unit. Particle effects, so you can have proper flames on Balrogs and stuff like that. Fire breath, a soft magic system maybe for some unique characters. Like some of the Maiar units could be expanded to be more than just really powerful multiple HP infantry and things like that. Maybe we could give them some actual magic. So there's some possibilities for that if we do switch to like Unreal 4 or the Pyrogenesis engine. But for now, it's Medieval 2 based, and we're going to kind of stick to the confines of what is possible with Medieval 2. So a challenging campaign, a fun multiplayer that's well designed and intriguing, and there's lots of like theory crafting. There's like a proper meta that goes on around it. Yeah, so for those of you that aren't familiar, that's kind of the breakdown. Can we tweak the AI to be better? There are different AIs that exist, but they all kind of have their trade-offs, right? DAC, I think, switched to a new AI a little while ago, and then they switched back because it was actually worse. I personally lack the ability to do that with the AI, and we don't have a ton of like hardcore coders on the team, so it's not really in the cards right now that we're gonna like design our own AI from the top down. We just have to work around the limitations of the Medieval 2 engine. But if we switch to another engine at some point in the unforeseeable future, then maybe their AI is actually pretty good and can pose a serious challenge. So we'll see. But I think that's gonna do. I think that's most of the questions I think have been answered about like the Haladin and other things just regarding the mod generally. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little preview so far. And hopefully you'll get to see more on the House of Haleth in the near future. It's a toss-up on who will be out first, really. Is it going to be Gondolin, is it going to be the House of Haleth, or is it going to be both at the same time? Not too sure. But keep your eyes on our Discord channel, my YouTube channel, and on our ModDB channel, and then everything that you would possibly ever want to know about the mod is going to be on there. Will they get Silverthorns? No, they will not. The Silverthorns are sort of like a special thing that Doriath does that nobody else does, and I don't really want to give that away. But yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this so far. They won't have any like projectiles like that, Jesdeep. They won't have Silverthorns or like split shots and stuff like that. I want to leave the sort of like mysticism to the elves, since they're kind of more that than the human beings are, whereas the Haldan will just be like really badass Vikings. In any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Take care.